How do they even figure this stuff out? I don't know. There's really smart people in the world, and then there's me. All right, we are at the Titan Missile Museum in some town in Arizona. Where are we?
I don't know.
We don't know where we're at. We're by a big cactus, though.
Yeah.
I guess you would call that a cacti, because there's one of them.
That is a saguaro cactus.
Where does the map think that we are in the world?
It says it on the building up here, I'm pretty sure.
This is called Green Valley. Anywho, we're gonna go see a missile.
Okay, so 2 adults with 2 or 4. You guys are okay. It's 55 steps down and then 55 steps back up. You're ready to take that? Okay. We have to ask. Alright, we're looking at $33 today. And that should light up for you. This is the second rate attack or insert.
Yeah, that's when they talk about these, and these were so that they could detect people in here. They were like sonar or radio or something. There's a motor for your car. Heck yeah.
It's already got dual exhaust on it.
There's a lot of stainless steel there.
There it is.
Look at that. This is the stage 1 engine. 430,000 pounds of thrust.
Right up there with Trusty Rusty and the AMC.
Look at that.
We got it.
This is a stage 2 engine that somebody pulled out of the bucket.
Well, bucket failed. How do they even figure this stuff out? I don't know. There's really smart people in the world, and then there's me. Somebody one day was just like, hey, I got this genius plan, and we're gonna make this huge super heavy thing fly all the way over to the other side of the world. "150 feet deep, 55 feet in diameter."
Nice. See anything?
Yep.
Holy smokes. That's freaking sweet.
It is cool.
That's a ways down there, ain't it?
Yeah, it is, and there's a rocket in there.
Yeah, I see that.
It's ready to go. Where's the go button at?
Well, we gotta find it.
Talk about the fastest ride of your life. Strap onto that. You could do it once. You ain't coming back. Look at that. That is freaking awesome. Oh,
This is
one way in, one way out. Yeah, this is like 2-inch thick metal plate, because this is where that was a V-groove and they welded it in. What does it look like from this angle?
I think this window here is pretty clean.
Just about the
where mine
same, huh?
is.
It's big.
Yeah, that is so cool.
It is big. Big, big, big.
We're gonna be down there.
You got smart people that can build things like this, and then you got people that I work with. That's all I'm saying.
So those are the 3 different squadrons.
The 390th.
right, so a little more comfortable down here than up on the surface, yeah? So in our story, the crew of 4 had just finished the second phone call, which was done at the bottom of the first flight of stairs, the one that was still kind of outside. Now, after the second phone call, the commander of the crew of 4 by themselves would have stepped inside and been in that caged area upstairs. While locked inside that caged area, the commander would have been in front of the only live security camera that was on site at the time. And this is where the commander was going to make the third phone call. The important part of the third call involved the commander reading out a secret code that he'd received that morning at the Air Force Base. He would read out the code and then destroy a piece of paper the code was written on. He would destroy it using a very high-tech method of lighting it on fire. He would then put the burning piece of paper into an old coffee can and burn the rest of the way out. And on the way down here, you might have noticed that the old coffee can is still attached to the wall upstairs. If you missed it on the way down, you'll be able to see it on our way back up at the end of the tour. Now, after the third phone call, the entire crew would come all the way down to here, the blast lock area. This is where they would come to make the fourth and final phone call, using this telephone right over here. The important part of the last phone call was to synchronize pushing 2 buttons, one out here and one inside the control center, in order to unlock the doors. Now, these doors were held shut with 4 hydraulic steel locking pins that would go all the way into the door and hold everything firmly shut. Now, everything on this side of the doorway is considered a soft area, whilst everything behind me is considered a hardened area. A hardened area means that it's well fortified and protected against just about anything, including an attack, natural disasters including earthquakes, or even a near-miss nuclear strike. A near-miss means anything that detonated a mile or more away. Several features went into making this area hardened, starting with the walls themselves. Now, these walls are all made from 4 to 8 feet thick concrete, and they've been reinforced with rebar. Not the typical rebar that you'd see on a construction site today. You might have noticed examples of the type of rebar that they used up by the cash register in the gift shop. Now, when these doors were unlocked, they did not open automatically. They had to be opened by hand. And I've been told that it was the job of the lowest ranked member of the crew of 4 to open them every day because they're incredibly heavy. These are the blast lock doors. They're made from steel I-beams that have been welded together and filled up with concrete. Would anybody like to take a guess as to how much one of these doors might weigh?
7,000 pounds.
Good guess. You're just a little high, but you're in the right ballpark. They actually weigh 6,000 or 3 tons each, so real close guess. These doors would also seal up really tightly. Now, with the help of a rubber gasket, the door could be airtight and keep out toxins, including radiation. Now, if anybody wants to see what moving a 3-ton door feels like, this door does not move anymore. But the next door that we're going to go past, that one will still move. So as we walk by, feel free to grab the handle, give it a pull, and see if you can move 3 tons. Just so nobody hurt their shoulder today, okay? Now, another feature you're going to notice as we head forward is that things have been shock isolated, meaning they're suspended from springs to help keep it really sturdy in case a shock wave ever came through here. I'll talk about more about shock isolation when we get into the control center. Yet another feature that you'll see everywhere down here is this lovely color, the seafoam green. Any guesses as to why they use this color down here? Well, they've done psychological tests to see how color affects us as human beings. And they found that seafoam green is the perfect color for keeping us all calm, relaxed, feeling good. Not feeling like launching a nuclear weapon just because we're having a bad week. Well, let me know if it's keeping you folks calm as we head into the control center. Again, watch your step and watch your heads. Follow me, please.
Does that thing dial out to Domino's?
Yeah.
Not too bad, huh?
There's those freaking hinges on that thing.
Yeah, I see it.
So here we are in the Missile Launch Control Center. As you might remember from the map at the beginning of the tour, this entire building is completely round. The round shape is one of the things that helps keep this area shock isolated. Another feature that helps with that are the giant springs. You'll notice 8 of those located around different points in the room. And when you stepped into the room, you stepped over about a 12-inch gap in the floor. The floors are not attached to the walls of this building. So this whole building is so well shock isolated, the entire thing could move up and down up to 18 inches, or from side to side up to 12 inches, and the crew would not even see a ripple in their morning cup of coffee. Now above us on the top floor are the crew's quarters. Up there, there's a bedroom, a full kitchen, and a bathroom. Below us, on the bottom level, is the maintenance area. That's where systems like the plumbing, the electricity, heating, and cooling were all monitored and taken care of. Now the main floor here is the nerve center of everything that happened in this facility. And this is where the crew would spend most of their time during their 24-hour alerts. So what would they do for 24 hours? Well, the first thing they would do is go to this giant book right here, and they would use this as a checklist. It would take them 3 to 4 hours to go through the whole thing, as they had to check over everything in the facility. Every switch, every gear, every gauge, every door, every indicator light had to be checked to make sure that everything was in perfect working order at all times. Then, halfway through the 24-hour shift, they would check it all over again, just to make sure they didn't miss anything the first time, and that nothing had broken in the meanwhile. Now, each member of the crew would also get a 4-hour rest break, where they could go upstairs and get some sleep, have a meal, maybe study for college. Or, if it was the late 70s, early 80s, they could play a game of Pong. Yep, each one of these sites had a government-paid-for Pong machine, so thank you, taxpayers. So, we've been talking about a crew of 4, but who were the 4 people who worked these 24-hour shifts? Well, they would have been made up of 2 officers and 2 enlisted personnel. For this next section, I'm going to need 2 volunteers to help me out. Anybody want to volunteer to help me today? You do? Come on up. You get to sit in this comfy chair right here. Thank you so much. I need 1 more volunteer, and I have 1 more comfy chair. Oh, saw you. Come on up.
Go ahead.
Either way, just come make yourself. It's a little narrow here, so just watch your step. Well, thank you both so much for helping me out today. I appreciate it. All right. So we're going to start by talking about the 2 officers. Our first officer is our Missile Combat Crew Commander. Welcome, Commander. Now, Commander, you would be in charge of everything down here. So you would be responsible for the missile, the equipment, the crew, and the mission itself. Can you handle that responsibility?
Awesome.
Excellent, that's what I love to hear. Now, the best part about your job was that you had the power to delegate responsibilities, aka give orders. And you would most often delegate to your deputy Missile Combat Crew Commander. Welcome, Deputy.
Thank you.
Now, Deputy, you would be a commander in training, so one day the big chair was going to be yours. But in the meantime, you had a couple special jobs all your own. The first job of the deputy is as our communications officer. So you would be in charge of those banks of radio and communication equipment right by your chair. The second job of the deputy is as our safety officer. The safety officer was responsible for keeping track of where every person was on this site at any given time. To help you with that, you'd have written things on this locator board right over here. All right, so those are the 2 officers, but what about the 2 enlisted men? Now I say enlisted men because when this was an active site, these were combat positions, and women were not allowed to serve in combat positions for most of that time. It was not until the late 1970s and an act of Congress that finally allowed the women in our armed forces to serve in combat positions. And in fact, silos such as these were some of the first combat positions offered to the women in our military. So I guess I should say, who are the 2 enlisted personnel? Well, our first enlisted person is our BMAT, our Ballistic Missile Analysis Technician. Now, this was a highly trained individual who knew just about everything that there was to know about the Titan II missile, and everything about all of this equipment that was used to run it. And if something on the missile were to break, they would be the person who knew how to get it fixed. The 4th crew member, second enlisted person, is our Missile Facilities Technician. They're the person in charge of keeping everything in the facility running smoothly. So they're in charge of the plumbing, the heating and cooling, the ventilation, changing light bulbs, things like that. So that is our crew of 4. Now, I've been told from people who worked in these 4 positions that those 24-hour shifts were filled with long stretches of boredom, tedium, repetitive drilling, training, and paperwork, interspersed with moments of stark terror. And the terror would come about whenever a message came through. Now, the message could end up being something benign like a weather report or a news update, but it could be orders, or it could be the all-important nuclear launch order. Now, in the United States, who is authorized to order a nuclear strike? The President. Absolutely right. That's part of the President's duties as Commander-in-Chief. Now, the Titan II was a retaliatory missile, so we were never going to use it to strike first at our opponents. But if we were under the threat of a nuclear attack, we were prepared to launch in retaliation. Now, the first indication for the crew here in the silo that a message was coming in would have sounded like this. That was clear. Everybody got that, right? Well, no worries. The crews were highly trained and they would know exactly what to do. As soon as they heard the message coming in, both the deputy and commander would each grab one of these, our emergency action message book. They would each grab a book, flip it open to a blank page, and both of them would immediately begin copying down the coded message, like the one that we just heard. Now, as soon as they finished copying down the message, both of them would close their books, close your books please, and exchange them with one another. Good. Then they'd open their books back up to make sure they each copied down the exact same coded message. Now, the two of you wrote down the same thing, which was nothing, right? Perfect. So after making sure they had the same message, it would be up to the deputy to finish translating it. And if it was the nuclear launch order, the deputy would then turn to the commander and say, "Sir, we have a launch order." Now, what do you think the crew would do first when they have a launch order? Any guesses?
Freak out.
Freak out, yes.
Confirm it some way?
Confirm it in some way, absolutely. They'd want to confirm that what they just received was a legitimate order. So, after freaking out, they would immediately go to the red safe over there. That is our emergency war order safe. Now, you might notice that it has 2 padlocks attached to it. Those padlocks would have been the personal property of the commander and deputy commander. Now, that safe would remain closed at all times except for when they got a launch order. At that point, as a team, they would go and open up the safe and pull out 2 things from inside. First thing that they're going to pull out of there is a set of keys. Because the only way to launch a nuclear weapon with a big red button is in a movie. Now, the second thing they're going to pull out of the safe is an envelope, one of 24 separate envelopes similar to these right here. Notice the 2 characters in the upper corner of each envelope. The first 2 characters that came through in the coded message should match the characters on one of the envelopes. Let's say it was this one. So, they pull out the envelope, open it up, reach inside and bring out, aha, more code. And this is what they would use to verify their orders. They would also use this to give them the 2 pieces of information that the crew needs before they can launch their missile. The first piece of information that they need is the launch time. Now, as I said, the Titan II was a retaliatory missile, and if we were under the threat of a nuclear attack, we were prepared to launch all 54 of our Titan II missiles in retaliation. But you can't launch 54 missiles at the exact same time without causing a traffic jam somewhere up there. So each site would have a specific time that they were supposed to launch. The deputy would translate that time and then write it across the face of this clock right here. Now, this is the launch clock. You might notice that it is set up to Zulu time. The great thing about Zulu time is no matter where you are in the world, it is the exact same time in Zulu, which makes it a great tool for coordinating efforts around the globe. So that is our first piece of information right there. The second piece of information is for this right up here. This is our butterfly valve lock control. Now this is a butterfly valve lock. We have 4 of these attached to our Titan II missile. It works like this. When this is up, it's closed. Like that, it's open. Closed again. These were used to keep the fuel and the oxidizer on the Titan II missile separated. Now, the fuel and the oxidizer, they're a hypergolic mixture. That's a fancy way of saying that when they come into contact with each other, they immediately burst into flame, which is what gives us the rocket propellant. So, the deputy would decode the code and then give it to the commander. The commander would read out the code to the BMAT. The BMAT would put the code in up here, press this button, and if a green light came on, it meant he had the correct code. Now, there are 17 million possible combinations to this lock, and the crew only gets 7 chances to get it right before the system will shut itself down for a whole month. Yeah, talk about a 2-step verification process. But our crews were highly trained. They were so well trained, in fact, that the moment they heard the message coming in, they could have everything written down, decoded, unlocked, put in, and ready to launch in as little as 3 minutes. This is one of the things that made the Titan II such a great weapon of deterrence during the Cold War. So, with our code put in, our launch time written down, and our keys in the console, we have everything we need to launch the missile. Now, it might have occurred to some of you that we are missing one piece of information that you'd think we would need before we could launch. Did anybody catch what that is?
Target.
Target, where's it going? Exactly, well done, you guys are sharp. Now, Commander, on your console over here, you've got 3 lights that say Target 1, Target 2, and Target 3. One of those should be lit up. Which one is it? Target 2. That's right. Now, as far as we know, this sight has always and forever been aimed at Target 2. But, Commander and Deputy, do you have any proof of where in the world Target 2 actually is? No, of course not. I wouldn't expect you to know that. Do you think the crews that worked here back in the day knew where the targets were? No, that's right, they did not know. And there were 2 good reasons why the crews that worked here didn't know what they were aiming at. The first reason is security. The location of these 3 targets is still classified information to this day. So nobody who's ever worked here knows for sure where the targets are. The second reason is psychological. It is a lot easier to blow up a nameless, faceless location that you have no connection with, as opposed to a place that maybe an ancestor came from. So, for the sake of our crew, it was a good thing that they didn't know where the targets were. So at this point, we have everything that we need to launch our missile. All we have to do now is wait for that launch time to tick over. But as I said, this would be a retaliatory strike, so we probably weren't going to have to wait for very long. Okay, so let's say that we've reached our launch time. What will happen next is the commander and deputy will both turn their keys. And when they do, a sequence of lights on this panel will light up in order, letting us know that everything is working the way that it should and that the missile is going to fire. Because there was no way for the crew to see that the missile had taken off. So they were relying upon the computer to let them know that everything went without a hitch. Now, the entire launch sequence, once they turn the key, only takes 58 seconds. And once they've turned their keys, there is no taking it back. There was no abort code, no self-destruct, no send the missile to an alternate target. So even if the President of the United States himself had come running in and said, "Commander, stop, stop, I made a terrible mistake," there's only one thing you can say to the President at that point.
No, sir.
Exactly, no sir, well done. Way to be polite to the President too. So 58 seconds, what do you folks think? Ready to see this launch happen? Little it's the missile launch, yeah? All right, let's do it. So Commander, Deputy, could you both stand up for me, please? So Commander, this is your key right here. Can you put your hand on that? Just wait for me. And then Deputy, your key is over here. Can you put your hand on this and just wait, please? Now notice how far away those 2 keys are. This is one last safety feature so that not one person alone always could launch the missile. It was always 2 people's responsibility. So Commander, here's what's going to happen. In a few seconds, I will turn control over to you. When I do, you will give us a short countdown. 3, 2, 1, mark. On mark, you both turn your keys to the right, just like you're starting a car, and hold it for about 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, the lights on this panel should light up, letting us know that you did your job and that our missile is going to launch. Are you ready, Deputy?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready, Commander?
Yes.
Take it away, please.
On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
Turn and hold. Great, you can let go and have a seat. Thank you both so much. So we've got our first light launch enabled, which means we have the correct code put in, and the second light, batteries activated. Now this is the longest part of the sequence, as it means the batteries on the Titan II missile are charging up for the first and last time. This will take 28 seconds, which gives all of us just enough time to sing the Jeopardy theme. And, no, I'm kidding, we're not going to sing it. But in a few seconds, we'll have the next light, APS power, which means the missile's fully charged. There it is. So in a few seconds, we'll hear a bell ring as we get silo soft, letting us know the silo door is opening up. There it is. Which then brings us along to guidance go, which means the guidance system on the missile has all the information that it needs. The missile knows where it is, and it knows where it's going. In a few seconds, we're going to hear a klaxon as the fire engine light comes on, letting us know that we have ignition in the silo. Which leaves us one last light. There it is. Could you read the last light?
Lift off.
Lift off. All of that in 58 seconds. And now our Titan II missile is on its way. It'll head all the way up and into the stratosphere before it comes back down to find its target. A target that could be up to 6,300 miles away. When it reaches its destination, it will detonate its nuclear warhead, a 9-megaton hydrogen bomb. And when that bomb goes off, it will cause devastation over an area of 900 square miles. That's bigger than Los Angeles and all of its suburbs, bigger than any city on the face of the planet. But, lucky for us, our crews never had to launch a Titan II missile in an act of war. Mutually assured destruction worked to keep all of us and the crew safe. But let's talk for a minute about what would have happened next for our crew if they had had to launch their missile. Well, the crew would have been under orders to wait for further orders. They'd have been sealed inside with those blast doors closed, which would have left them with a 19-day supply of air to breathe. They would have also had a 30-day supply of canned food and water. But after 19 days, if they didn't hear anything, well, then they would have a tough choice to make. And really, they would have only two options. The first option is to go upstairs, lie down, and take an extended nap, and just not worry about anything pretty much ever again. The second option is to go downstairs to the maintenance area and attempt to open the emergency escape tunnel with whatever's blocking it from the devastation that's most likely happening outside. Now, if they could get the tunnel door open, the crew would then have as much food and water as they could carry, a pair of sidearms between the four of them, and the location of a rendezvous spot about 20 miles away into the mountains, where they'd have to make their way on foot, and at that point, hope to meet up with somebody who could give them further orders. It was a grim fate either way, especially when you consider the average age of the people that worked in these positions was between 18 and 24 years old. So imagine this as your first job out of high school or college. Like I said, it was pretty grim, but lucky for us, our crews never had to make those tough choices. Peace through deterrence worked to keep all of us safe. Okay, that was the heavy part of the tour. We're going to lighten the mood back up here now, starting by thanking the commander and the deputy commander. Give a round of applause. Thank you. So, we've got a few minutes before we're going to move on with the tour. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask at this time?
What year was this built?
So this one was finished and came online around 1963, and it was one of the first ones deactivated. So 1982 is when it was shut down. The last Titan II site was shut down in 1987. So about 24 years after the project really kicked into gear. And this museum actually opened in 1986, so about a year before the last one shut down. This was open and running for business, which is kind of cool.
So, from your speech, it was 3 minutes from the time they got the alert.
They could
and
be
they
ready.
decoded everything.
Yep. And have the keys put in and be ready to launch for whenever that time was going to tell them to.
And that could be 10 minutes from now, 2 hours from now.
Could be 2 minutes from now if it's like, because yeah, one of the things was if they got the order to launch, this was a retaliatory strike. So the orders for to these silos would come from the president down through the Pentagon, through Strategic Air Command, and then to these silos. And that chain of command could take up to 25 minutes. Now a strike coming from the Soviet Union at us, or if we were launching at them, could take 35 minutes. So they'd have 10 minutes maybe to turnaround time. That's why the 3 minutes to get it launched could be so crucial. It could give the crews in the silo a chance to launch before first strike touchdown.
And how many of these were around this area? Or
So
was it mixed
So 18 in the air is around Tucson. So they wanted to be all 54 were around an Air Force base. So 18 here around Tucson, 18 around Little Rock, Arkansas, and 18 around Wichita, Kansas, because they don't have Air Force bases. And so 54 in total.
And was there any reason
For these sites?
Well, no, as George Bush Jr. would say, was there any strategery
To why these-
involved in why those states and those locations and those Air Force bases?
There was some. So they wanted to make sure that the Titans were near an Air Force base. That was priority one. All the three of those cities had one. The second thing was geologically, those areas were advantageous because the topsoil was easy to work with, and those areas were not prone to earthquakes, which since this is all underground, that was a pretty big deal. Beyond that, the reasons chosen was political because the local government wanted the money that the local contractors were going to get for doing the work. They employed about 5,000 local contractors between all three states to do the work on these Titan sites. So, as usual with America and history, follow the money. Good question. Anybody else? No? There'll be chances more in the silo, but for now, I do want to reassure our commander and deputy that you didn't actually launch a missile today. So let's go look at the silo. We'll head out the way we came in, but head straight ahead, all the way down to the very end of the cableway. You'll know it when you see it, and make sure you get your pictures as you're going. We shut the lights off in here since this is the last tour of the day, so get your pictures now. I would hope so.
It's freaking insane. It's like little shock absorber dealies. Yeah, cableway suspension hanger.
So folks, make sure you work your way around. We've got 3 separate viewing windows for you to look through and get different angles on the missile. Now the missile itself is 103 feet tall and 10 feet in diameter. Fully loaded, the missile will weigh 330,000 pounds. When you're looking through the windows, you're going to notice the hydraulic platforms. Those platforms can be raised and lowered to give maintenance crews access to different points on the missile. The silver tiles that you can see on the wall of the silo, those are acoustic tiles to help absorb the sound of the missile taking off. Now another feature that helps with the sound is water. In the walls of the silo, there's a 100,000 gallon water tank. And during the launch sequence, they would pump water into the silo. The water would turn into steam, the steam would rise up and that would not only the sound, but also the vibrations of the missile taking off. Otherwise, the thrusting power of the Titan II was so strong that it could just shake itself apart upon launch without those precautions. Now, the silo itself is 150 feet from the surface all the way down. We are on level 2 of 9 levels, and we're about 35 feet or 10 meters below the surface right now, to give you some idea. Now, this missile that you're looking at, it is not the same Titan II missile that's been on alert here for all those years. We asked, but the military would not allow us to keep that missile for the museum. But this is a real Titan II missile. This was a training missile that we got from the Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. This was used to practice different maintenance and repair drills. So as a training missile, it never had a nuclear device on it, and it never had fuel on it, which is what makes it perfectly safe as a museum piece. Any other questions for me?
What made it detonate?
So it had an altimeter to detonate at, so they can send it to blow up, basically do 2 ways, either in an air burst, which then did that 900 square miles worth of damage, or they can send it to what's known as bunker buster mode to try to destroy a target that's underground.
Hello, world. Well, still freaking hot as balls up here. Oh, boy. You're ever bored and there's a museum by you? I don't even care if it's for basket weaving. Go. Every time I go to a museum, it's freaking awesome. It makes me want to go to more of them. And look at that backdrop. Check out that American flag.